Now's the time for a great deal on a new Honda. It's time to take an adventure with rugged capability and commanding style. Check out the Honda Ridgeline, Pilot, or CR-V. For a limited time, well-qualified buyers can get a 3.99% APR on a 2025 Pilot, a 1.99% APR on a 2025 Ridgeline, or a 2.99% APR on a 2025 CR-V.
See dealer for financing details.
Are you someone who tries to drive while distracted by your phone? Someone who props it on the steering wheel or peeks down at it for a glance? Or just scrolls and scrolls? If so, you could be the next person to get into a fender bender, get a ticket, veer off the road, or even cause a crash that kills you or someone else. Enough already. Put the phone away or pay. Paid for by NHTSA.
Ah, motherhood. 1 minute, you're mom of the year.
I love you, Mommy.
Then the next, not so much. From bath time to bullying, from potty training to puberty, parenting is full of challenges. But one thing is for certain, you are not alone. Welcome to Modern Mom Probs. I'm your host, author, mother, parenting expert, Tara Clark. Join me while we tackle today's modern mom problems.
Welcome back to another episode of Modern Mom Probs. I'm your girl, Tara Clark, and today we are talking about a big modern mom problem, pelvic floor health. I am joined by Dr. Sara Reardon. She is the creator of the Vagina Whisperer. If you are familiar with her social media antics, including her much beloved vulva costume, you're going to love this interview. Sara has a new book out. It's called Floored, A Woman's Guide to Pelvic Floor Health at Every Age and Stage. I'm so excited to introduce her and bring her on. Dr. Sara Reardon, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Tara. I love chatting with you.
This is one of those conversations that truly is going to be like girls talk, because this is not a conversation that I'm having with too many other people aside from you or other girls, other women, I should say, who understand this. So we're going to be talking about your new book, which is amazing. First of all, I love the branding and the coloring because it's just right up my alley. But your new book is called Floored, A Woman's Guide to Pelvic Health at Every Age and Stage. I think a lot of times women don't think about pelvic health until it's too late.
Right. Correct.
Did you ever notice that?
Well, I mean, in my clinic, I live in New Orleans and I have work at a pelvic health clinic here. And we see people who have issues. No one's coming in saying I just want to be really proactive about this. And so that was really one of the sparks for this book was we get a little bit of sex ed, maybe a little bit of period education as women, but nobody's teaching us about our pelvic floor and there's no guide to do that. And so I really just went wide and kind of covered every system from bladder and bowel to sex and pregnancy and menopause in one place.
Yeah. I mean, it really runs the gamut. It really does go from, like you said, pregnancy all the way through to perimenopause, menopause, and all of that. And I'm so grateful because this is a conversation. Let me tell you, I don't think 10, 15 years ago, people would have publicly been talking about this.
It's interesting because I started my Instagram account, The Vagina Whisperer, I would say 8 years ago when I was pregnant with my second son. And it was really for my group of girlfriends who were asking me questions like, do I do perineal massage? Or, what's the best belly band for my back pain? And I said, let me just put this on social media and then they can refer back to it because we're all having babies around the same time. And then the account has just really exploded organically.
It blew up. Well, your content is so good, Sara. That's why.
Oh, thank you. Well, I love this. I mean, I just feel like we're not being educated about our bodies. And when you see so many women year after year struggling, I'm like, okay, first of all, we need to be having these conversations because so many women experience it. And it's kind of like back pain. We shouldn't be embarrassed about these things. It's just a body part. And second, we don't know where to get help. And I really want to be a resource for people.
And you are. The Vagina Whisperer is one of my favorite accounts. If you're not following her, you have to follow her at the Vagina Whisperer. I like that I'm showing the @ sign, but this is video and audio, but it's fine. You know what I mean. It's an @ sign. Find her on Instagram. Your stuff is entertaining and educational at the same time. And I think that's a it's a hard balance to strike. Sometimes people tend to be like strictly educational and comedic, or strictly, did I say educational and comedic? Like strictly comedic or strictly educational, not blending the two. And I think you blend the two so seamlessly. So bravo to you on that. What is the best way for a woman, maybe, I don't know, let's say 40 years old, to start to be proactive for her pelvic health?
So, I think at 40, it's one of those tricky ages where we may have kids or may not. Maybe having our first pregnancy, we may be done.
Right.
And then we're kind of getting into this perimenopausal space, which we don't even realize is happening.
Yeah.
But in our early 40s, we go from postpartum to perimenopause so quickly. It's like a blurry transition. And we're like, what's happening to my vagina? Right. So it's, if you could be having bladder leaks or painful sex or vaginal dryness or even like constipation and hemorrhoids, all of those things. I think one of the first things is, and this is what I really cover in the very beginning of the book, is like, what does this group of muscles even do? So if there's a problem, you kind of know it relates back to your pelvic floor. And then the second thing is, I give some tips in the book, like, look at how you're sitting. Are you twisting your legs up like a pretzel? Are you clenching your vagina and your butt all day? Right. And if we're holding tension in our muscles, they can't work well. And then the other thing is, look at how you're peeing and pooping. Are you pushing when you pee? Which is like, moms are notorious for trying to be fast and efficient at everything. But when you pee, you should not push when you pee. You should really sit and chill and relax, because pushing can weaken your pelvic floor over time.
Get out of here. If there's one takeaway from this entire conversation,
that's the tip. Right.
That's the takeaway.
I know.
Really?
Yes.
You should kind of just like relax your body.
Just relax, because your bladder pushes the urine out for you. So, I've seen women who have never given birth. I mean, it's a little bit of a misnomer that only pregnancy and postpartum moms have pelvic floor issues, but I've seen young women. And if they don't know these things like, hey, don't push when you pee, or use a little squatty potty or stool under your feet when you're pooping, and, don't hold your breath when you're exercising and lifting weights, those things over time kind of add up and can really impact your pelvic floor negatively.
Sarah, these are so many things that you're saying that I'm sure people do all the time that they have absolutely no idea that is connected to pelvic floor health.
Right. I know.
That's wild. I heard once, now correct me if this is, or like debunk this myth, I guess I should say, that when you pee, you're supposed to lean forward because it's healthier to like lean forward to pee. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, it can be very helpful because when you lean forward on your elbows, it kind of helps relax you, but it also puts you in a little bit more of like a squatting position, which can help relax your pelvic floor. And that's why that little pooping stool, the squatty potty, is so helpful, because for pooping, it elevates your feet and puts you into a squatting position. So for peeing, leaning forward is totally fine. Sitting down is also important. I know a lot of us, I know you're in New York. Yeah. I know. And you're like, who's going to sit down on a toilet in New York City, right? But
well, what's funny? Believe it or not, New York City has very few public toilets available. Like, that's one thing I always hear tourists say, is that they're like, yeah, but there's nowhere to go to the bathroom. And as someone that had lived there and worked there, you don't necessarily think of that, because like pee at home and then you go to work and you pee at work, and then or you go to a restaurant or something. So you're not like out necessarily all day like that. So yes, there's not as many options, but you are definitely right. There's Starbucks, and Starbucks is gross. Yeah. Because everyone is then going to the bathroom at Starbucks because it's the only public toilet available.
I know. I remember I was in New York City a couple of years ago with my kids, and we were in Battery Park, and we had to go to the bathroom there. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is, I mean, it's and bad. It was, I remember it years later. That's how bad it was.
I know even where you're talking about. It's not, there's so few places to go to the bathroom. So yes, that's true. You don't really want to do a squat. You want to properly sit down and lean forward.
It's all about relaxing your muscles. Right.
I love that. Ever since I was a little kid, this is going to be like way like too much information.
There's no TMI
I was going to say, we're talking about all the stuff, so it doesn't matter. Ever since I was a little kid, when I poop, I always sort of go up on my tippy toes. Like, I don't have a squatty potty, but ever since I was a little kid, I always like sort of go like ballerina foot on my tippy toes when I go poop.
It's because it's intuitive that might help you relax better. And especially I'm short. I'm like 5'2". So I don't even reach the floor for a lot of
I think that's what it is too. I'm
Yes.
5'4" in shoes. So really I'm
Right.
like 5'3"-ish, like 5'3.5"-ish. So yeah, same.
Yeah. And so that's why like having your feet flat, putting them on a stool. It's so funny. I went to a girlfriend's house and stayed there after a conference and she didn't have a squatty potty. And I was like, this is not acceptable. And I Amazoned one her and I was like, next time I come, this needs to be in the bathroom because I have to have one. So
That makes so much sense. I wonder if I should get one for my son too, because his feet sort of dangle. I mean, he's getting taller now, but still.
Yeah. So if you are a mom, obviously listening to this, I put a stool under my kids' feet because it helps them relax better. And another little hack I have for little kids is I put those little curly straws we get at birthday parties?
Yes.
I put that in the bathroom. And so when he has a hard time pooping, I tell him to blow through the straw and it helps him kind of bear down to empty out because, kids eat a bunch of crap and they get constipated.
Yes.
And so, feet on the stool, blow through the little straw. And that's a hack that an adult can use, but it's a great one for kids.
Wow. Here you are chock full of hacks. I mean, you always are, though. I mean, that's literally like you've built an entire career on these great kind of hacks.
On pooping hacks, yes.
But it's building up our pelvic floor, not for my son, but for me and for you and for us. And it's so important because I think it's like the simple things that build the simple habits, right?
Yeah.
That build up to really good physical health. And this isn't just pelvic health. This is health across the board, right?
Right.
And you said about sitting. So right now I am sitting crisscross applesauce or sitting pretzel. And you said that that's not necessarily good. So how does our position or posture affect our pelvic floor?
So your pelvic floor is at the base of your pelvic bones, which, if you've got like little skeleton jammies, you see those kind of elephant ear shaped bones at the base, at the pelvis. And at the bottom of that is that hammock of muscles. And that's your pelvic floor. You can't see them. But when you have your hips turned in or really far out, and you do that for really prolonged periods of time, the tension in your hips, in your abdominals, in your buttock muscles, that all influences your pelvic floor. So crisscross applesauce isn't terrible. If there's a way to sit, that's the one. But if you ever look at women and they've got their like knees turned in or they like wrap their legs around multiple times, like really twist them up, sitting like that over and over can cause tension in your pelvic floor. And it might not be an issue for most women, but if you have like painful sacs or a hard time starting your urine stream or constipation, I'd be like, first thing I'm like, uncross your legs. And you've got to sit with your feet flat or cross at the ankles, sit up nice and tall so you're not slouched. And then kind of that allows you to take big, deep breaths, which also helps relax your pelvic floor.
I'm doing it now, Sarah. I don't know if you could see, but I'm literally
I see that and I love that.
I uncross my legs. They're not crisscross applesauce anymore. They're parallel and zipped up together. And I'm sitting back. See, look at this.
I know. And that pillow behind your back keeps you nice and straight. I mean, this is like what I do for my kids, and they're like, leave me alone, woman.
But it helps. Like I said, it's all those little micro habits that build up into a lifetime of health, right?
And it's interesting because in the book I compare like, why isn't going to a pelvic floor therapist the same as going to a dentist? Because I'm like, we go to a dentist proactively. Like we literally start when we're 2 to learn how to brush and floss and get routine checkups for cavities or issues. And I'm like, why don't we do that for a pelvic floor? Because it literally involves like so many systems that affect us if they're not working well.
Yeah. And I think people are embarrassed to say the word vagina. And so
oh, well,
I think it's the
we
stigma.
need to be friends and that might change.
Exactly. If we're going to be friends, we're going to have to talk about everything right now. I already told you that I go on my tippy toes when I go to the bathroom. So we're friends now.
Right. Exactly. It's funny because I'm like, people all the time, like, I have a question for you. I'm like, listen, if you've got my number, just text me. I'm like your pocket vagina whisperer. But it's really that I want us to have these conversations. And whether it's with me or your girlfriends or your medical providers, it's like we can't get help if we don't even talk about the problem. And so I always say, I just want to normalize the conversations. I don't want to keep normalizing the problems of using, incontinence liners or having painful sex or having surgeries for, pelvic problems when we didn't do therapy first.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that seems very extreme to go from 0 to surgery for things that maybe we could have done in PT ahead of time.
I know it happens all the time though. So, you know.
So let this be like a cautionary tale for everybody. What are some simple, I feel like I'm jumping ahead, but I'll jump anywhere I want to because this is our show. Let's jump ahead to some simple things that we can do at home to strengthen our pelvic floor. We're busy moms, right? We're going through our day. We're taking care of the kids. We're taking care of work. We're taking care of the family. We're taking care of everything, honestly. And where can we fit in some simple things, sort of low hanging fruit, big impact, low effort ways to build our pelvic floor?
So, you know, your pelvic floor muscles they need to be strong, but they also need to relax. So I'm going to tell you how to do some strengthening things. But one of the biggest things is I also want to make sure that you don't have tension already. A lot of women actually have tension, and doing strengthening exercises could make that worse. So if that's you, like pause, don't do the strengthening stuff. And then also when you strengthen, you also have to balance it with relaxation. So often we go to like bar classes and Pilates where everything's like zip up, suck in, tighten it up, and we don't let it go. And you have to like let it go afterwards as well. But some easy things are, you know, use the muscle when you need it. I think after we have kids, our muscles don't fire as quickly in this area. And so when you're picking up a stroller, when you're picking up a box of Costco groceries, like pull that muscle in, because every time you load your body, that's pressure on your pelvic floor down, and that weakens it over time. So I'm like, if you're going to pick up your kiddo and put him in the car, I'm like, okay, buddy, 1, 2, 3. And I like pull in my pelvic floor, which my favorite cue to do that is like, think about sipping up a thick smoothie with your vagina. So don't really sip up this thick smoothie with your vagina, but just imagine it. And then do the activity. So use the muscle when you need it. The other thing is to not hold your breath when you're lifting or doing something heavy that requires a lot of exertion. So if you're pushing a piece of furniture, you should be zipping up that pelvic floor and then exhaling as you do it. Don't hold your breath. If you're picking up the stroller, pull in your pelvic floor and then exhale as you're lifting the stroller up. Those really 2 simple tips go a long way. And then if you want to strengthen, there are exercise programs that focus just on pelvic floor. I have an online one as well. There's so many out there, but they just teach you the foundation of how to connect with this muscle. And then you build it into different exercises like planks and push-ups and squats and lunges. So you just make it part of your routine, and you don't have to like carve out all this time to go to PT because you just have a really healthy program at home.
And you're not sitting W style or crisscross applesauce all day.
Right. And you're, relaxing when you pee and poop, and you're breathing throughout the day, and, different things like that. So, it's a little more nuanced. Like you do have quick Kegel contractions, which you want to squeeze and relax, but you also have endurance ones where you want to squeeze and hold for 10 seconds and then relax fully. So you want to work the endurance part of the muscle as well. And then another quick hack I tell people is called the knack, and it means to like squeeze your muscles before you cough or sneeze. So like Kegel before you cough or squeeze before you sneeze. And that helps turn those muscles on before a cough or sneeze, which is when a lot of moms end up leaking.
Yeah. Yeah. You had mentioned, those are great tips. You had mentioned before about the difference between strengthening and relaxing. Can we explore that a bit?
Yeah, totally. So these are muscles like any other muscles in your body. They can be tight and tense. And when that happens, they don't work well. So I get a lot of neck and shoulder tension, and then I get really bad headaches, right? I don't want to go lift a bunch of weights to release that. I want to get massage. I want to do some stretching. I want to do some breathing. I want to change my posture. And that all helps the muscles soften. And that's kind of what we need to do for our pelvic floor. So some of the ways you might have tension, and I go over this in the book as well, like kind of how to gauge which category you might fall into, is that you want to adjust how you're sitting, even how you're sleeping. Like make sure that if you're on your side, you've got a pillow between your knees. If you're on your back, you put a pillow underneath your knees. All of that helps your body kind of relax. And then you want to focus more on like yoga and breathing and things that are going to stretch the hips. And then also we do internal massage to your pelvic floor. So it's literally like a finger in the vagina when you go to a physical therapist, and they press on the muscles to release it. And there are different tools you can use at home to do that to yourself as well. So it just helps relax those muscles so that they can function better. But you don't want to be doing Kegels or tightening if you have a tension issue already.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like the analogy about the neck because that really resonates with me because I often have really stiff necks and shoulders. So like, no, I would not want to be working out my neck when it's already so tight. You have to loosen it before you can strengthen it. So yeah, that's a great analogy. Thank you. Gosh, there's so many things to think about. And no, there is, because when you think about pelvic health, many times you just think like incontinence or, painful sex, you know, like I feel like there's like only like very specific things, but it really runs the gamut. It's much more than just those things.
Right. And, 36 muscles attached to your pelvis. And so the pelvic floor doesn't work in isolation. I mean, it's everything from, obviously leakage or painful sex, but it's like if you have a C-section scar or an abdominal scar, I mean, that could cause a lot of tension in your abs, and that can lead to constipation or incomplete bladder emptying, even pain with sex. Painful menstruation. There's some research that shows that like after a C-section, like 30% of women have painful menstruation, or, almost 9 out of 10 women have pain with sex after giving birth. And I'm like, what?
What?
We deserve good sex. I know. But even things like orgasms are pelvic floor muscle contractions. So I see a lot of women who either have weak orgasms or they have difficulty orgasming. And some of it is like the connection with the mind and the body, but it's also if these pelvic floor muscles aren't working well, that definitely influences like your ability to have an orgasm.
Wow. Now I want to talk about this. Now we're going to explore. No, it's important. Yeah. Let's dive deeper, if you will. How does a weak pelvic floor cause painful sex? How does that work? Explain the science to me behind that, and then we'll talk about solutions.
So typically for painful sex, it's more a tight pelvic floor. So it's like the muscles are tight and two things happen. It's like you feel like you can't put anything in the vagina. It's like hitting a wall. And that could be not just with sex. It could be with pelvic exams. It could be with tampons, anything in the vagina. And so it's like a muscle spasm. Their muscles are at the opening of the vagina and they're not relaxing. And then it causes pain. Well, then when you try to insert something and it's painful, our bodies aren't going to relax. They're going to tighten up even more. And then the other thing that can happen is that during sexual activity, you can have pain. It can feel like somebody's hitting like a bruise with deep insertion, or like one side, it feels like almost like deep hip pain. So that's a tension issue where you kind of need to do some of that relaxation and massage stuff. But with orgasms, if you are not able to orgasm, two things are happening. That you're like getting to a climax, but you can't relax all the way. Like you have to have these contractions and relaxation. So I see a lot of women who have tension in their muscles and they can't get to that orgasmic state, or they're really weak. And this is really common after giving birth or going into menopause. Like your muscles atrophy, they get weaker with time or with pregnancy. And I remember after giving birth, it's like I'm kind of like, oh, let me see what my pelvic floor is doing. Let me try a Kegel. Let me use my vibrator and, have an orgasm. And it's like radio silence. I'm like, nothing's going on.
You're like, knock, knock, knock. Hello.
Nothing's there. I know. But I'm like, I can't be the only one, right? So this is why it's like, we don't even know what to expect from our bodies and then how to improve it. And especially after giving birth.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That resonates when you said about C-sections, because I had a C-section with my son. And so I don't know how that's different, versus if I would have had him vaginally.
Right.
That's something I'll never know, I guess. But that is something I always thought about. This sounds silly too. I always thought that I was, and I'm using this in quotes, lucky that I had a C-section because I thought maybe it protected my pelvic floor from weakening that if I would have had him vaginally. Does that make sense? Or am I just making that up in my mind?
No, you're not. So a C-section women who have C-sections definitely have less pelvic floor issues that pertain to weakness. So less prolapse, less leakage. But they tend to kind of fall into that more tension bracket where because this scar doesn't heal the same way it did. The tissue doesn't move the same way it did pre-pregnancy and pre-C-section. So it gets stuck. And a lot of the times we see pain, numbness, sensitivity, and then some of those bladder and bowel or sexual health issues relate to it. So I'm a huge fan of doing C-section scar massage, whether it's been months, years, decades. I mean, I worked on someone, I tell this story in the book. She was like in her 60s and she had had 3 C-sections and a hysterectomy through her abs. And she could not empty her bladder. I mean, she was retaining tons of urine, having bladder infections, and literally just massaging her old C-section scar. And it was like, better.
Yeah, that's
And
amazing.
It's amazing. And this is why I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such simple stuff, but we're just not getting the tools. And so I will say that pregnancy itself changes your pelvic floor. So even in the third trimester of pregnancy, you're going to have weakness. And so regardless of what way you give birth, there can be some pelvic floor weakness issues, but a C-section does have a little bit better outcomes with respect to like vagina problems pertaining to weakness.
Right. Going back to, I feel like maybe I didn't ask enough about the solutions for the painful sex. Can we go back to that? Because I just want to like sort of wrap that up. So what are some ways that people can, whether it's loosen their tight pelvic floor or strengthen it for ways to deal with painful sex?
So I would say for the tension issue. So if you've got this tension, which is the majority of people who have painful sex, the first things are you need to use a lubricant during sex. There is no, I think, stigma anymore against using a lubricant. I'm like, just proactively do that. Your tissues get drier and thinner postpartum and with aging. And so having a lubricant just helps decrease friction and increase pleasure, to be honest. So use a lubricant. The second thing is you really need to work on relaxation of these muscles. And some of the ways that you can do that are lots of stretching. I go over some of them in the book, but also like if you go to yoga or, just do some really deep hip stretches at home, that helps relax the pelvic floor. Breathing. A lot of us hold our breath. And when you breathe, that in itself just helps soften your pelvic floor. And then there are these internal wands that you can use to help relax the pelvic floor muscle. So there are some called dilators, which look like tampons of different sizes, and you insert them into the vagina and like teach the muscles to kind of desensitize and almost stretch a little bit when something's inserted. And then there's other ones that are called like little wands that kind of have a curve where you go and you kind of press on the muscle. I have a diagram of this in the book, but you press on the muscle and it's almost like, when you get a massage and you find that little knot and you're like, oh, just hold it there. It's like a hurt so good. It's like that, but in your vagina.
Right.
And then so that helps soften it. And then the last thing is scar massage at the opening. So a lot of women, like 93% of women who have a vaginal birth have a perineal tear and they have scar tissue at the opening. And that can cause pain or tension. So doing some scar massage at the opening, just using your thumb to massage the tissue. So really kind of simple PT techniques. But I remember seeing a woman who was 11 months postpartum after her first baby, and she wanted to get pregnant again. And she's like, I cannot have sex. It is so painful. I'm so depressed about it. It's causing me and my husband to have challenges. And within 3 sessions, she was 100% pain-free. Because
That's amazing.
It's amazing. It's just literally teaching her like the day-to-day relaxation stuff, but also just doing some massage and softening and scar tissue massage that she had never had. And she's like, I wish I would have known about this sooner and come at 3 months. But my doctor said, wait 6 more months and see what happens. And that's a long time. So, I really hope that this just kind of encourages people to get help a little bit sooner.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure that it will, because between this book, your account, all of these conversations that we're having now on podcasts and you're doing with the book tour too, like people need to talk about this. This is something that often I don't even know if people are talking about it with their girlfriends. Like I want to say that people are often suffering in silence with this.
Yeah.
Because this is not something that has probably ever come up with my friends ever. And
really?
And if we've ever spoken about pelvic health, it's like joking about peeing your pants.
Yeah.
It's more of like a ha 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 comedy thing versus like this poor woman wants to have another baby and she can't because sex is painful. And so she's having to struggle with that sort of in silence. Right. So it's not a funny thing. It's a very serious thing.
It is. And part of my account is like bringing levity to these issues. So I totally get it. And I think it's okay to laugh about it, but I'm also like, okay, then we need to do something because it's not going to get better. Like when we're in diapers in our 60s, like we ain't going to be laughing, we're going to be like, this sucks,
It's true.
So that's what I'm like, okay, let's like work on it now.
Yes.
And then, when you get into, and I will say this, like pelvic floor doesn't work in isolation. So we work with a lot of acupuncturists and psychotherapists. And, when you're perimenopausal and menopausal, like using hormone supplementation, if you're open to that, or, so there's so many different people that we work with as a team to really help women during this stage, every stage, in fact. But this is definitely one piece of the puzzle that I think doesn't get talked about a lot.
Yeah, let's talk about it. let's talk about the team, because you're right. The body is a system, right? There
Right,
are
totally.
not one system, many systems together for the whole organism that is us as a human being, right? So how does this integrate with the others?
So, obviously right now, menopause is a huge topic.
I'm actually going to an event just this evening called Demystifying Menopause. So I'm with you on that.
And it's amazing and it's everywhere. And I love, love, love it. I think I struggle a little bit because I don't hear about the pelvic floor, even in the menopause conversations. I'm like, y'all, our vaginas are like literally weakening by the second when we're going into perimenopause and menopause. But like, we are not talking about this. We're talking about strengthening and bone density. And like, women know more about osteoporosis and diabetes than they do about their pelvic floor. They do. And I'm like, but your pelvic floor is what 50% of women leak after the age of 65. It's one of the number one reasons we end up in a nursing home later in life. So like, it can severely impact you, and we have to have the conversations. So I'm a huge fan of strength training. And we talk about strength training, but like, you have to learn how to pull your pelvic floor in during those workouts. If you don't, you're not getting the benefit of, the pelvic floor while you're exercising and doing all of our weight exercises. And then I am a big fan of using topical estrogen on the vagina. So using a cream that is helps plump up the vaginal tissues. It decreases dryness. It can help with incontinence and bladder issues. And that's like forever. I mean, I used it postpartum because I was breastfeeding for a long time, and you have low estrogen, and it kind of, my vagina was like just not getting back to where it needed to be. Yeah. And then even in perimenopause, it's like, I can feel like I play tennis and like, oh my gosh, I like feel like I could pee right now, like, or I feel like I'm going to leak, and I'm like, I'm the vagina whisperer. I can't pee my pants.
You can't, right?
So it's like, but I know that I do my exercises. I'm diligent about doing my exercises, but I also know my estrogen levels are like going in the tank, and I need to plump up those tissues with estrogen as well. And then nutrition. I mean, a lot of what we eat and how we fuel our body, like if you're constipated and you're straining, I'm like, you can do Kegels till the cows come home. But if you are straining, it's going to weaken your pelvic floor.
Is the topical estrogen prescription based? Do you get that from an OBGYN?
Yeah. So you can get it from any medical provider. It is prescription based. I've used, I recommend patients go to some of these online platforms a lot, that you have a little telehealth visit. But I also recommend there's other options. So there's vaginal moisturizers. Some of them are like little suppositories you put in. Some of them are oils or lotions that you can put on the area. But the topical estrogen is prescription based as of now.
That's interesting. I never heard of that. So I'm going to have to look into it, just because it seems almost like preventative.
It is. And that's what I'm so big about. It's, this physician who is in our local area, a patient went and saw her and asked her about perimenopause. And she was like, you want to do as little as possible for as long as possible. And I was like, well, that is the absolute opposite of how I view our bodies.
Yeah, I agree.
I was like,
I'm like,
I know.
Okay, go ahead, explore that.
But it's like, why are we waiting until things fall apart to try to put them back together? Like, why aren't we being proactive about helping women instead of waiting until they're like in pain and discomfort and then being like, okay, we're here to help, maybe, So again, this is one of the things where I think it's just, there's so much we can do preventatively instead of feeling like in medicine and in PT, we're just doing damage control.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel like people end up in surgery by not doing any of the preventative care. And then you're like, now we have no other choice, but we need to tighten this up surgically.
Right. And even if you tighten it up, I'm like, I have so many patients who go to surgery, and I am a huge fan of it if it's the right move for them.
Of course.
But I'm like, go to PT before to learn how to use these muscles properly, and then go to PT after, because 30% of people who have that surgery will have to have a repeat surgery in 10 years. If you're having that surgery at 40 or 45, you might have to have it again if you don't learn how to not weaken your pelvic floor and then how to not strengthen your pelvic floor. And so you really need to we don't give people total knee replacements and send them home and be like, good luck. No, they get PT.
Of course.
So we need to be doing the same thing for women's health.
Yeah. You know what it is? I think so often that women's health is sort of just brushed aside. Not that I have to tell you this. I mean, it's literally your industry, your profession, but I think it's not given the same respect and gravity as something like a knee replacement or a neck surgery.
Right. And it's, part of it, I think, is because we can see those problems. Like you see a person with knee pain or crutches and it's very visible. And then also that, like, a lot of the research fields are dominated by people with penises and not people with vaginas, but that's changing. So
it is changing.
Yay. But it's, I think that this really has a lot to do with like the pelvic floor conversations and the menopause conversations and the motherhood conversations. Is women were kind of like, we're tired of this and we deserve better. We are literally what keeps the population going, and we should not be an afterthought in our society.
Yeah, 1,000%. Yes. One time, this is about a year ago or so, I did a video. It was like a humorous, like jokingly light video about like jumping on a trampoline and peeing or something like that. And so many of the comments were like, no, you don't have to live like this. There's so many ways that you could combat it. Don't say that. Don't put this message out there. And I was like, you know what? Yes, good for them. And like, I was making a joke. It actually may have been a sponsored post. I don't entirely remember what it was for, but I was so happy that people were like, yeah, we don't have to suffer like this. We don't have to suffer in silence.
It's like the pelvic floor crusade. I know.
It really was. I was like, you know what? Good for you guys. I'm so glad.
No, but to your point, it's also important that, for you, that other moms feel seen, because a lot of moms experience that. Like, we don't jump on the trampolines or the bounce houses. And that's a very common experience that we kind of don't talk about. So even just you bringing that up helps people see like, oh, one, you're not alone. Well, and then the pelvic floor crusade, and it's like, oh, wait, there's help, so all good.
It was all good. It's true. Because like there were like two sides to that, right? One, I'm saying I'm posting a message that is resonating with people because they're like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one that can't go on a trampoline. And then the other people were like, no, don't suffer in silence. There's help available. And so I was like, good for them. I was happy about that, though.
That's really funny.
Yeah. Truth be told, I'm actually pretty good on a trampoline because I always thought it was because I had a C-section.
Part of it is.
That might be the case. And so it was pretty good. But one time I did a split. I don't know what I was thinking. I did like a full split. I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Okay, I've never done a full split my whole life, let alone like as a mother in my 40s. So
jumping on a trampoline? Yeah.
I'm impressed.
Sometimes I forget how old I am and I think I'm still 15. So I'm like,
but I'm the same way, Tara. Like, I'm like, in my soul, I'm in my 20s, but in my body, I'm in my 40s.
Same, 100% same. Truth be told, I turned 45 on Sunday. So I feel that very much because I'm like, what do you mean I'm not 25 anymore? And I'm like, no, girl, you are 45.
Your spirit is young. I love it.
That's what it is. So I'm attending a demystifying menopause event this evening with Tamsin Fidel. And I'm really can't wait to meet her in person. Really looking forward to that. And so I will report back to you about if they cover pelvic floor health well enough.
Yeah, I love Tamsin. She and I have connected in the past, and she's a huge advocate for this. But, a lot of this conversation is led by physicians. And so I think that, we're not medical doctors or PTs, but she's so open. I think a lot of them, they'll talk about bladder stuff and things like that. So I feel confident that something will come up.
I think so, too. There are many other women on the panel as well. So I think they really touch on everything. I don't know if I saw a GYN. I don't remember, like on the flyer, but I guess
there's a lot of like urologists and stuff like that, and sexual medicine doctors. So, which I love this. It's like we all have to work collaboratively, and we're all on the same kind of mission to really just improve how women are getting treated. And so I love the work that a lot of these kind of bigger kind of images and profile people are doing, because it elevates the messaging when, a lot of us don't have those big platforms. So I just love the work that they're doing to bring light to this.
Absolutely. And you do have a really big platform and image. So don't pretend that you don't, Sarah, because you absolutely do.
Oh, well, that's sweet. People are like, when they meet me or they'll come say hi, like in an airport or Costco, which is like where I live on the weekends. And they're like,
are you buying oranges at Costco?
Grapefruits, actually.
Grapefruit. You're right. I actually thought maybe they were blood oranges. And I was laughing to myself because I was like, did she make those blood oranges because periods. I don't know. My brain was thinking about all different things.
It's so funny when we were talking about the cover for the book, we had a bunch of different options. And I was a little bit like, I'm not sure about the fruit because I don't want to think about like the vagina as like a fruit. And, sales was very much like women need a visual. If it's on the bookshelf, we need to see it and be like, what is that book about? So it's kind of got to spark something. And then we had a grapefruit at first that was like yellowish. I'm like, oh, it's not juicy enough, right? It was like a dry grapefruit. And I'm like, I need a juicier. And they're like, okay, how's this, Sarah? I'm like, okay, that's good. I'm like, can it have a drip? And they're like, okay, that's too far. They're like, we can't have a drip, Sarah. I was like, okay, that's fine. I was like,
it can't be dry. It has to be moist, but it can't be dripping.
Exactly. And I was like, leave it to me to just keep pushing, until they're like, okay, we're drawing the line,
Yeah. But no, it's great. But that's what I was trying to figure out. I couldn't tell if it was a grapefruit or if it was a blood orange.
It's a grapefruit, but we had other fruit options as well. And this is the one that we landed on that I'm pretty happy with. So.
It's the right one. It's the right one. I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were talking about people coming up to you at Costco.
Oh, yeah. So they're, they'll just come say hi. And I love it when people do that because sometimes they're staring at me and I'm like, is that a patient or do they follow me? Or, I have a twin sister too. So I'm like, do they think I'm my twin? But I love when people come say hello. I'm sure you do as well. It's just nice to kind of see who, people connect with you. And, but when they do, they're like, oh my God, you're this. I'm like, I just feel like a hot mess soccer mom behind the scenes, to be honest. Like, I don't brush my teeth till noon till I work at home. Like if I have to put on a bra, I'm like a little bit grumpy about it. And I just feel like just another hot mess mom behind the scenes. But yes, I am a pelvic floor expert as well. So
I totally understand. I always tell people like, I'm just a girl in sweatpants sitting at her kitchen table, right? Like that's literally all that.
But that's why people love you too, because it's so relatable. It's like, you don't feel like you always have to be perfect or on. And it's like very relatable. And I think that that's why people love you as well, because the modern mom is not the perfect mom. It's like, we're just all kind of like held together by scotch tape and a paperclip,
Exactly. Very much that. No, you're absolutely right. And you live down in New Orleans, which is my favorite city. Love, love, love it. I was trying to explain to my son the other day because I want to take him. We travel pretty often and New Orleans is one place that he hasn't been yet. And I was trying to explain what makes it special. And he's like, oh, that sounds fun. I'm like, no, buddy, you don't understand. Like it is special. And we have art that we bought. Like we have art that is displayed in our house that we bought in the square. And so I always like explain to him there was this artist, his name was Rob McInvale, who super, super talented guy. Unfortunately, he had what could only be best described, unfortunately, as a psychotic break. So I think he's like in an institution now, which is really sad, but he's extraordinarily talented. And so we have several pieces of his art because we loved it so much. And so every time I see it, I think of him and then I think of New Orleans and love it all over again. So we're going to try to get down there soon enough. But what do you think sets New Orleans apart from other places?
I grew up here. So I grew up here until I was a teenager. And then the first plane flight I ever took at 17 was to college. I mean, so it was, this is all that I really knew. And so I went away to college and physical therapy school. And when I was in physical therapy school, Katrina happened. And there were no jobs here after I graduated. And so ultimately I was away for 17 years. And then after I had my two sons, I somehow convinced my husband to, move back to New Orleans. He's not from here. He grew up in Connecticut and Plano, Texas. Right. So like far cry from New Orleans.
Totally different.
And he was like, okay, let's just do it for a couple years. Like, I want you to feel like you got what you needed. So he's like 2 years. And then now we're like 8.5 years later. And so
I love it.
I think what it is it's really a small town. It's not a huge city. I mean, you can get from edge to edge within 15 minutes. A lot of us grew up here. There's a lot of pride, but there's just like this culture and energy that just permeates everything. It's like our community is so great. Our friends are great. It's like everybody's a friend. You just, there's no strangers. And I think that there's just a vibrancy. I mean, when I moved back here, I was in my mid 30s and my girlfriends were like, oh, Mardi Gras is coming. Like, let me see your costume closet. I'm like, costume closet? And they're like, Sarah, like, get it together. You need to have a closet. And now I do. And it has my vulva costumes, but it also has all of my other New Orleans costumes. So there's just an energy here where you can kind of be wild and goofy and fun, even in your 40s and 50s and 60s. Like, you never lose your spirit. And I think that that's what makes it really special.
It is very special. And I think I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I think that your content is informed by that fun goofiness, really come as you are spirit of New Orleans. And you see that in your social media
Maybe
content.
so. I've never thought about it. I kind of like have only been here since I've been the Vagina Whisperer online, but it's also a really supportive community. I mean, I feel like when I moved here, it was like everybody was like, go check out this woman and she's doing great. And she opened a new clinic and she's got an online, platform. So everybody's just really supportive. And I love that. There's other issues like hurricanes and schools and all that stuff.
Sure.
But it's also, I think for kids, the brand is that like, oh, New Orleans is just like a party city. But I think for kids, it's actually a really kid-friendly place. Like we don't go to like wild Bourbon Street, but like we go to parades and festivals, and there's just always kind of something vibrant going on.
I love that so much. I need to book my next trip there 1,000% with my son this time.
Yes, and he will love it. And it's a fun town.
He will. I know he'll love it because, like I said, we travel pretty often and he has some spots that are his like top notch, but I'm so curious to see what he'll think about New Orleans because I know that he'll dig the vibes. He's all about bringing the vibes. And
I love that.
And New Orleans is just full of vibes. That's just what it is. I tell people that all the time. Some people are like, oh no, it's just a party city. I'm like, it's not. Have you been to Magazine Street? Magazine Street is magical.
Right. Or St. Charles Avenue and taking a streetcar
it's magical.
I mean, it's just, to your point, that's a great word. And even if you just come visit, I'm like, folks, it's a great place to just spend a weekend.
It is. No, it really is. We've been several times. Actually, each time has been for work. Once my husband had a conference. Once I used to work at Nickelodeon and we did a Habitat for Humanity.
Oh, nice.
After Katrina with the cast of the show Victorious at the time, which I know sounds very strange, but that's what we did. And so that's what brought me down there. And I was down with the cast of Victorious and we were building homes. And so it was very magical. So like I said, I've been a couple times. That was years and years ago, way before my son was born. But let's talk about your book. Where can people find it? Where can we follow you online? Tell us all the things, Sara.
Thanks, Tara. So Floored is available now. If it's before June 10th and you're listening to this, it's available for pre-order. You can get it on my website, thevagwhisperer.com/floored. And everybody who orders gets like a month of pelvic floor workouts and like my favorite top 10 guide, my top 10 tips guide for like what I actually do to my pelvic floor. Some of the things we talked about today. And then you can get it at any bookstore where you shop, really. So it can be a local bookstore, all the online, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Bookshop, all of those. And if you are online, I'm at the Vagina Whisperer on Instagram and at the Vag Whisperer on TikTok, because TikTok does not work like the word vagina. So
did you find that out the hard way?
I did. Where like all of a sudden you're like, my account's closed, and it's fine. It's so funny because you and I have been on social media for so long, so some of the things that fly shock me and some of the things that get banned also shock me.
Yes.
So but that's where I am, and follow along. I think you'll get lots of great tips and kind of see more about the book.
Definitely. I love it. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Tara.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Modern Mom Probs. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive in today's problem with me, your host, Tara Clark. Join me next time when I'll be interviewing another great guest and tackling another modern mom problem. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and a rating. As always, you could head over to Modern Mom Probs on Instagram and give me a follow. Or check out my book, Modern Mom Probs, A Survival Guide for 21st Century Mothers, available online wherever books are sold. Well, that's it for today. See you next time, folks.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.